Tập tu về một mô tô lục mẹ mấy cái kỳ phá hoãn rồi cô có để kêu cô phá ngày ngày phá tập của tôi về một mô mà hay ni mô mô phô nua mà ai ngày phá tập của ngày luộc về mà lo lệ đấy Kiara Moana from Tamakima Kaurau, Aotearoa, otherwise known as Auckland, New Zealand. This presentation, this Talanoa, is part of my contribution to a collaboration on Moana biblical criticisms. Moana criticisms is the confluence or the meeting point of three biblical hermeneutical movements that have been rippling across and from Pacifica, that's my term for Pacific or Oceania. So these three movements are Pacific hermeneutics, island and islander criticisms, and native criticisms. I joined the first of these movements over 30 years ago, and I hope that future generations of Pacifica biblical critics will give them new energies and directions. New here is spelled in two ways. New, N-I-U, which is our term for coconut, something that is local, something that is native, and new as in N-E-W, fresh energies and fresh directions for these movements. To use another oceanic metaphor, Moana biblical criticism is like a lagoon in which, on this occasion, three biblical hermeneutical canoes harbor. Pacific hermeneutics was the first canoe launched before my time, and it called attention to the ways and wisdoms from our local Pacifica region with the intention that those would help us read biblical texts in our island worldviews. Let me remind you that the Bible came from outside. The Bible is a foreign object to Pacifica, and Pacific hermeneutics was using the ways, the worldviews, the insights, and the wisdoms that were local in order to make this foreign text meaningful for our people. The second movement, island and islander criticisms, set out during my time in the global context of the Society of Biblical Literature. And it reached into the Caribbean waters and other island settings, such as imperial islands in Europe and Asia. And we have been intentional in publishing, in other words, in pushing our canoe into the wharves of dominant white scholarship through publication, which is the tool of the white masters. Third, native criticisms set out more recently with the courage to flip at as well as flip colonial scripture and colonialist mindsets. Flip is to turn over, flip at is to give the middle finger to colonial scriptures and colonial mindsets. These three Pacifica hermeneutical canoes meet up at Moana biblical criticism. In my own work, I don't use the labels contextual or indigenous interpretations because, in my humble opinion, from our world and worldviews, those two labels, contextual and indigenous, are empty boxes assigned by dominant white and whitish scholars for those of us who do things differently. The contextual and indigenous labels are part of the colonial project. Put sharply, they are labels for boxes that dominant white and whitish scholars built to deny the differences between minoritized scholars in white societies, as well as between real scholars from Africa, Asia, America, Caribbean, and Pacifica. I don't jump into those white and whitish boxes, but rather I prefer to get into canoes that we have built for ourselves. The canoes of Pacific hermeneutics, islander criticisms, native criticisms, and now Moana criticisms. They are all plural because there are more ways than one. These are native canoes for which we use our stuff and we build them in our ways, according to our sacred stories, according to our scriptures. Moana biblical criticisms is also like a lagoon into which the world and worldviews of native Pacifica islanders flow. Like for all other people, our worldviews are shaped by our world, our island worlds. So our worldviews are different in details between the various island groups of Pacifica because no two islands are the same. However, the diverse Pacifica island groups share the recognition of four living bodies in our world: Whenua, land; Wasa, sea; Langi, sky; and Pulotu, underworld. These are the four bodies in the Pacifica world and worldviews. Three of these bodies, land, Whenua, Wasa, sea, and Langi, sky, these bodies are visible. But the unseen Pulotu is hauntingly ever present in those three visible bodies. We have different names for these bodies, but they are recognized across Pacifica cultures. Moreover, natives think and expect these bodies to be connected. I use the label Moana for the meeting of the four bodies. At this juncture, I flip at Disney. Disney messed things up when their 2016 animation titled Moana, the name for the young woman character, courageous young woman, is also presented as the name for the sea. In the Pacifica world, Moana is a name for the deep, dark blue sea far from land. We have other names for the shallow part of the sea. For example, in my native Tongan language, we have the names Namo, Fanga, and Liku, three different names for the shallow part of the sea. And there are other names for the whole ocean. Here I use the Fijian term name Wasa, or the version in Samoan is Vasa, or Vaha in Tongan. But I've chosen to use the Fijian Wasa to refer to the whole sea, whole ocean. I use Wasa for the whole ocean and Moana for the meeting of the four bodies of the Pacifica worldviews. When I tell native sacred stories, I draw attention to the meeting of the four bodies of the Moana worldviews, Moana world and worldviews. For instance, in one of the Tongan sacred creation stories, there were only Moana, the deep blue sea, and Pulotu, the underworld, at the beginning. Then fire came up from Pulotu to form an island, followed by a bird coming from the sky with a seed that grew into a creeper, from which came a maggot that turned into three human beings. Kohai was female, Koau was male, and Momo was of the third gender. And then Maui brought partners for them from Pulotu, and they populated the island with native Tongans. So the creation of the Tonga group was through the collaboration between Pulotu, sea, sky, and Whenua, land. Now, there are more to this sacred story, but all I'm drawing attention to in this presentation, in this talanoa this morning, is to the collaboration of sky, sea, land, and underworld in the creation of the Tonga group, in order to draw attention to these four bodies of the Moana worldviews. One of the points at which the four bodies of Pacifica world and worldviews meet is food. We consume creatures from the sea, from the land, from the sky, and from the underworld. In our raising of foodstuff, whether you are a vegetarian, carnivore, or some variation of both, depends on the waters that come up from the land, on the wind that carries water across the sky, on the energies that the moon and stars send, on the minerals that come from the sea and the underworld, and of course, on the mercy of the land. No human person can raise foodstuff without the presence and assistance of the four bodies of the Pacifica world and worldviews. Assuming, of course, that the four bodies, the land, sea, sky, and underworld, are healthy, willing, and cooperating. In this regard, the lack of food is evidence that something has gone awry or awry in the four bodies of land, sea, sky, and underworld. This is the condition we find in Numbers 11. Something has gone awry, or some things have gone wrong. The story in Numbers 11 opened with the people complaining and the Lord getting so mad that they burned the people. The complaint of the people had to do with food. If only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we used to eat in Egypt for nothing. The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our strength is dried up, and there is nothing at all but this manna to look at. As a parent, I hear this kind of complaint almost every day. And I often get angry, but not so angry that I would consider burning our daughter. So I understand the people's complaint, but I'm disappointed, disgusted actually, with the Lord's extreme, ungodly, inhumane response to burn the people, the children who were dependent on them. Moses interceded on behalf of the people and pushed the Lord to be a responsible parent. The Lord's response went to the other extreme. Therefore, the Lord will give you meat and you shall eat. You shall eat not only 1 day or 2 days or 5 days or 10 days or 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you and have wailed before him, saying, why did we ever leave Egypt? The Lord was still very angry, mad, nasty, unparent-like, horrible. The alternative food came in the form of quails, which came up from the sea. The Lord sent a wind across the sky to bring birds from the sea. Then a wind went out from the Lord. and it brought quails from the sea and let them fall beside the camp, about a day's journey on this side and a day's journey on the other side, all around the camp, about 2 cubits deep on the ground. 2 cubits deep, if you can think of it, it's 2 cubits deep on the ground, covering the whole camp, and a day's journey on that side and a day's journey on the other side. It's many birds, my friends. The solution for the complaint of the people, as a solution to the complaint of the people who were on the land in the wilderness, came up from the sea. And the Lord gave the solution that turned out to be more problem. The wind was sent by the Lord, the same angry character who earlier burned the people with fire. In Moana worldviews, fire is something that comes from Pulotu, from the underworld. So in this Moana reading, the 4 bodies are present: land, sea, sky, and underworld. And the Lord is the angry character that crosses and messes things up. First, by throwing fire at the people. Then the Lord killed more birds than needed. That's unnecessary waste. And the story ended with a plague that sent more people to the land of the ancestors. The Lord is the destructive and wasteful character in this story of crisis. In the face of food crises, people tend to look for someone or some reason to blame. We didn't prepare the ground appropriately is one of the blames laid on ourselves. Our seedlings were not healthy. We didn't plant at the right time. Or there were extended droughts and extreme weathers due to climate change. Those are some of the blames that we lay as explanation for the food crisis. And in the global context, more recently, for instance, Putin's special operation is causing food shortage in Africa and raises the cost of living across the world. There are many other reasons, many other blames, but rarely do people lay the blame at the feet of divine beings. Numbers 11, on the other hand, is clear that the reckless and wasteful deity, the Lord, is causing food crises. My aim in this talanoa is not to expose the deity of the Hebrew Bible as a reckless and wasteful deity. The texts of the Hebrew Bible do that on their own. They don't need me to point attention to that, to expose that. Nor is my aim to portray the deity of the Hebrew Bible as being more reckless and wasteful than the deity of the Christian Bible. Jesus, the Son of God in the Christian Bible, taught that if your hand causes you to sin or causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than to have 2 hands and to go to hell, to Gehenna, to the unquestionable fire. Rather, my aim in this talanoa is to call attention to how the sovereign deity of the Bible, the Lord, disrespected and mistreated the 4 bodies of the Moana world and worldviews. Such was the case in Numbers 11, and the upshot was food crisis. The Lord disrespected and mistreated the 4 bodies of the Moana world. To that I add that the next time we want to blame someone or something for food crises, we should begin by asking if anyone or anything, divine, human, living, or artificial, has been disrespectful against and mistreated land, sea, sky, and underworld. I suggest this not because I wish to fix the blame, for food crisis or on anything or anyone, but because I invite that we be more respectful of the four bodies of the Moana world and Moana worldviews. In this regard, let us not be like God. Let us not be wasteful, but be respectful of sea, land, sky, and underworld. Levereva Malanga, Kautatawa. Malo.